is the preview window. This here is the live window. Set that to... What does that even mean? Good morning, Rose. Good morning, Shadow. I think that's it. I think that's it for right now. That's okay. That is quite all right. Huh. Sorry, I'm just playing with some settings here. I don't know what I'm doing. Don't know what I'm doing. Melissa's there as well. Good morning. Good morning. Good to see you all. Yeah, there you go. It's William's birthday today. It is indeed. There you go. Comes round, once a year? Something like that. Okay, my chat thing's working. Yay, that's fine. Very good. Yeah. So yeah, we've got William. Do you have any like big plans for the day or for the weekend or what are you guys doing? You're going to be doing something right there, William and Melissa. Mm-hmm. The question is, what's my birthday? The Carrington does not do birthdays. Yeah. It makes things so much simpler. So much simpler when you're not having to worry about birthdays. Yeah, there we go. When you've had enough of them, as I have had, it's like, you don't need any more of them. You don't need them. What? Good Lord. But tell you what, there's no secrets around here. Man. This is like the worst kept secret ever, and I didn't tell anyone. What? You're stopping right there. You're not having any more after this one. All right. Yeah, well, there we go. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, Brianna's here as well. Good morning. Good morning. Now, is that part of an Ewok hat that you have on in your avatar? Is it part of your Ewok suit? Don't know. It might be. It might be. Yeah. All right. It's okay. So there we go. This is for William. This is for William, aka Shadowtronic. Shadowtronic. It's his birthday today. There we go. We'll get this. We'll get this done. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear William. Happy birthday to you. Yeah. And that's where the fireworks go off if I had like crazy special effects and stuff set up in this studio. But I don't. So that will be, I have to imagine those. I have to imagine them all. Yeah. All righty. Very cool. So, anyway, the important part of any birthday is, as everybody should know, you're supposed to take advantage of it and milk it for as long as you can. So, I mean, there's pre-birthdays, there's the actual day of the birthday, then there's a couple of days of close enough to the birthday where you can still get away with extra stuff. That's how it works. At least I'm not popping out of a cake in a dress. Okay. Well, I had planned on it, but in my little 4x4 little studio here, there's no room for a big cake like that. I tried, Jano. It was not to be. All right. Very cool. Okay. Let's see. They got yeah. Oh yeah. So anyway, it remains to be seen whether or not William will be able to join us tonight for FIFA Soccer. So yeah. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, I'll be on at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. I did the little training thing. I did the little training session, the Volta soccer, the little 4 versus 4 street soccer thing. It's kind of fun. Very fun, actually. It is. Birthday fortnights. Wow. BW can milk it up for up to 2 weeks. That's impressive. That's definitely something to aim for. If I could get away with that, I would. All right, let's. We do need to get on with our book, though. We do need to get on with our book, which is the fantastic, and I quite mean that literally, The Monster Men by Edgar Rice Burroughs. About to start chapter 12. Good gracious. This thing's gone so fast. We're at 70%, by the way. 70%. Man, this book is all over the place. It is quite fun. Oh, that's right. William's got some great advice there. Everyone hit the like and share button. And Lightning FNC's here as well. How are you doing? Good morning, man. Good morning. Okay. So just recapping quickly where we left off yesterday. Number 13, the clever clone, has adopted the name Bulan, which was given to him. Most of his brother clones have died, like fighting for him. A handful of others, the 3 remaining, they want to go hang out with the orangutans for the rest of their lives because they think they're never going to fit in. And that they kind of like rebel against Bulan there, who's like, I need your help, and they're like, no, we're done. We want no more truck with them human peeps. And right as he's doing that, then comes, he hears the sound of a woman screaming, and this will be catching up, I guess, two chapters ago, maybe, where Virginia Maxon, escaping off of the, what was it, the Pruha, those boats, she escaped from the crocodiles and then got captured by an orangutan. So that'll be, boy, oh boy. Complicated. Up and shared. 14 is in the box. 14's in what box? Oh, for 14 days. You think 14 days is decent? 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah. So if we do 3 chapters of this today, then that'll leave 3 chapters on Monday, and we can start a new novel on a Tuesday. We can do that. Yeah, we got it up here. Up and share. We're doing good, Lightning. The okay, so we're all up to speed on where we are. Okay, let's do it. Chapter 12. Perfidy. What does perfidy mean? The state of being deceitful and untrustworthy. All righty. Perfidy. On the morning that Bulan, that's clone number 13, set out with his 3 monsters from the deserted longhouse in which they had spent the night, Professor Maxon's party was speeding up the river, constantly buoyed with hope by the repeated reports of natives that the white girl had been seen passing in a war prahu. In translating this information to Professor Maxon, von Horn habitually made it appear that the girl was in the hands of number 13, or Bulan, as they had now come to call him, owing to the natives' constant use of that name in speaking of the strange and formidable white giant who had invaded their land. At the last longhouse below the gorge, the head of which had witnessed Virginia Maxon's escape from the clutches of Nanaka and Baronda, the searching party was forced to stop, owing to a sudden attack of fever which had prostrated the professor. Here they found a woman who had a strange tale to relate of a remarkable sight she had witnessed that very morning. It seemed that she had been straining tapioca in a little... Oh, man. Tapioca pudding is delicious. I love that stuff. It seemed that she had been straining tapioca in a little stream which flowed out of the jungle at the rear of the longhouse, when her attention was attracted by the crashing of an animal through the bushes a few yards above her. As she looked, she saw a huge Miaz Papan cross the stream, bearing in his arms the dead or unconscious form of a white-skinned girl with golden hair. Her description of the Miaz Papan was such as to half convince von Horn that she might have seen number 3 carrying Virginia Maxon, although he could not reconcile the idea with the story that the 2 Dyaks had told him of losing all of Bulan's monsters in the jungle. Of course, it was possible that they might have made their way overland to this point, but it scarcely seemed credible. And then, how could they have come into possession of Virginia Maxon, whom every report, except this last, agreed was still in the hands of Nanaka and Borunda? There was always the possibility that the natives had lied to him, and the more he questioned the Dyak woman, the more firmly convinced he became that this was the fact. The outcome of it was that von Horn finally decided to make an attempt to follow the trail of the creature that the woman had seen, and with this plan in view, persuaded Muda Safir to arrange with the chief of the longhouse, at which they were then, to furnish him with trackers and an escort of warriors, promising them some splendid heads should they be successful in overhauling Bulan and his pack. Professor Maxon was too ill to accompany the expedition, and von Horn set out alone with his Dyak allies. For a time after they departed, Sing Li fretted and fidgeted upon the veranda of the longhouse. He wholly distrusted von Horn, and from motives of his own finally decided to follow him. The trail of the party was plainly discernible, and Sing Li had no difficulty in following them, so that they had gone no great way before he came within hearing distance of them. Always just far enough behind to be out of sight, he kept pace with the little column as it marched through the torrid heat of the morning, until a little after noon he was startled by the sudden cry of a woman in distress and the answering shout of a man. The voices came from a point in the jungle a little to his right and behind him, and without waiting for the column to return, or even to ascertain if they had heard the cries, Sing ran rapidly in the direction of the alarm. For a time he saw nothing, but was guided by the snapping of twigs and the rustling of bushes ahead, where the authors of the commotion were evidently moving swiftly through the jungle. Presently a strange sight burst upon his astonished vision. It was the hideous number 3 in mad pursuit of a female orangutan, and an instant later he saw number 12 and number 10 in battle with 2 males, while beyond he heard the voice of a man shouting encouragement to someone as he dashed through the jungle. It was in this last event that Sing's interest centered, for he was sure that he recognized the voice as that of Bulan, while the first cry for help which he had heard had been in a woman's voice, and Sing knew that its author could be none other than Virginia Maxon. Those whom he pursued were moving rapidly through the jungle, which was now becoming more and more open. But Sing Li was no mean runner, and it was not long before he drew within sight of the object of his pursuit. His first glimpse was of Bulan running swiftly between 2 huge bull orangutans that snapped and tore at him as he bounded forward, cutting and slashing at his foes with his heavy whip. Just in front of the trio was another bull, bearing in his arms the unconscious form of Virginia Maxon, who had fainted at the first response to her cry for help. Sing was armed with a heavy revolver, but he dared not attempt to use it for fear that he might wound either Bulan or the girl, and so he was forced to remain but a passive spectator of what ensued. Which is what he's been this entire book. like a passive spectator, like right from the very start. He knows which, like he's overheard everyone doing their like backstabbing, plotting plans and machinations. Doesn't tell anyone. Just absorbs it all as a silent witness. Abulan, notwithstanding the running battle the two bulls were forcing upon him, was gaining steadily upon the fleeing orangutan that was handicapped by the weight of the fair captive he bore in his huge, hairy arms. As they came into a natural clearing in the jungle, the fleeing bull glanced back to see his pursuer almost upon him, and with an angry roar turned to meet the charge. In another instant, and the three bulls were rolling. In another instant, Bulan and the three bulls were rolling and tumbling about the ground, a mass of flying fur and blood, from which rose fierce and angry roars and growls, while Virginia Maxon lay quietly upon the sward where her captors had dropped her. Sing was about to rush forward and pick her up when he saw Von Horn and his Dyaks leap into the clearing to which they had been guided by the sounds of the chase and the encounter. The doctor halted at the sight that met his eyes. The prostrate form of the girl and the man battling with three huge bulls. Then he gathered up Virginia Maxon, and with a sign to his Dyaks, who were thoroughly frightened at the mere sight of the white giant of whom they had heard such terrible stories, turned and hastened back in the direction from which they had come, leaving the man to what seemed must be a speedy and horrible death. Sing Lee was astounded at the perfidy of the act. To Bulan alone was due the entire credit of having rescued Professor Maxon's daughter, and yet in the very presence of his self-sacrificing loyalty and devotion, Von Horn had deserted him without making the least attempt to aid him. But the wrinkled old Sing Lee was made of different metal, and had started forward to assist Bulan, when a heavy hand suddenly fell upon his shoulder. Looking around, he saw the hideous face of number 10 snarling into his. The bloodshot eyes of the monster were flaming with rage. He had been torn and chewed by the bull with which he had fought, and though he had finally overcome and killed the beast, a female which he had pursued had eluded him. In a frenzy of passion and bloodlust aroused by his wounds, disappointment, and the taste of warm blood which still smeared his lips and face, he had been seeking the female when he suddenly stumbled upon the hapless Sing. With a roar, he grasped Sing Lee, as though to break him in two, but Sing was not at all inclined to give up his life without a struggle, and number 10 was quick to learn that no mean muscles moved beneath that wrinkled yellow hide. There could, however, have been but one outcome to the unequal struggle, had Sing not been armed with a revolver, though it was several seconds before he could bring it into play upon the great thing that shook and tossed him about as though he had been a rat in the mouth of a terrier. But suddenly there was the sharp report of a firearm, and another of Professor Maxon's unhappy experiments sank back into the nothingness from which he had conjured it. Then Sing turned his attention to Bulan and his three savage assailants, but except for the dead body of a bull orangutan upon the spot where he had last seen the four struggling, there was no sign either of the white man or his antagonists, nor, though he listened attentively, could he catch the slightest sound within the jungle other than the rustling of the leaves and the raucous cries of the brilliant birds that flitted among the gorgeous blooms about him. For half an hour he searched in every direction, but finally, fearing that he might become lost in the mazes of the unfamiliar forest, he reluctantly turned his face toward the river and the longhouse that sheltered his party. Here he found Professor Maxon much improved, the safe return of Virginia having acted as a tonic upon him. The girl and her father sat with Von Horn upon the veranda of the longhouse as Sing clambered up the notched log that led to it from the ground. At sight of Synge's wrinkled old face, Virginia sprang to her feet and ran forward to greet him, for she had been very fond of the shrewd and kindly man of whom she had seen so much during the dreary months of her imprisonment within the campong. "Oh, Synge," she cried, "where have you been? We were all so worried to think that no sooner was one of us rescued than another became lost." "Oh, Synge's been taking a walk, Linny, that's all," said the grinning man. "Very glad to see Linny back again." I can't do the pidgin English. It's so terrible. All right. And that was all that Synge Lee had to say of the adventures through which he had just passed, and the strange sights that he had seen. Again and again the girl and Von Horn narrated the stirring scenes of the day, the latter being compelled to repeat all that had transpired from the moment that he had heard Virginia's cry, though it was apparent that he only consented to speak of his part in her rescue under the most considerable urging. Very pretty modesty, thought Synge, when he heard the doctor's version of the affair. "You see," said Von Horn, "when I reached the spot, number 3, the brute that you thought was an ape had just turned you over to number 13, or as the natives now call him, Bulan. You were then in a faint, and when I attacked Bulan, he dropped you to defend himself. I had expected a bitter fight from him after the wild tales the natives have been telling of his ferocity, but it was evident that he's an arrant coward, for I did not even have to fire my revolver. A few thumps with the butt of it upon his brainless skull sent him howling into the jungle with his pack at his heels." "Well, how fortunate it is, my dear doctor," said Professor Maxon, "that you were bright enough to think of trailing the miscreant into the jungle. But for that, Virginia would still be in his clutches, and by this time he would have been beyond all hope of capture. How can we ever repay you, dear friend?" "That you were generous enough to arrange when we first embarked upon the search for your daughter," replied Von Horn. Just so," said the professor. But a shade of trouble tinged the expression of his face, and a moment later he arose, saying he felt weak and tired and would go to his sleeping room and lie down for a while. The fact was that Professor Maxon regretted the promise he had made Von Horn relative to his daughter. So the promise was, if you find my daughter, I will make her marry you, and you can have all my money. Yeah, okay. Once before he had made plans for her marriage, only to regret them later. He hoped that he had made no mistake this time, but he realized that it had scarcely been fair to Virginia to promise her to his assistant without first obtaining her consent. Yet a promise was a promise. And again, was it not true that but for Von Horn she would have been dead, or worse than dead, in a short time, had she not been rescued from the clutches of the soulless Bulan? Thus did the old man justify his action, and clinch the determination that he had before reached, to compel Virginia to wed Von Horn, should she, from some incomprehensible motive, demur. Yet he hoped that the girl would make it easy by accepting voluntarily the man who had saved her life. Left alone, or as he thought alone, with the girl in the growing shadows of the evening, Von Horn thought the moment propitious for renewing his suit. He did not consider the natives squatting about them as of sufficient consequence to consider, since they would not understand the language in which he addressed Virginia, and in the dusk he failed to note that Synge squatted with the Dyaks close behind them. "Virginia," he commenced, after an interval of silence, "often before have I broached the subject nearest to my heart, yet never have you given me much encouragement. Can you not feel for the man who would gladly give his life for you, sufficient affection to permit you to make him the happiest man in the world? I do not ask for all your love at first. That will come later. Just give me the right to cherish and protect you. Say that you will be my wife, Virginia, and we need have no more fears that the strange vagaries of your father's mind can ever again jeopardize your life or your happiness, as they have in the past." "Well, I feel that I owe you my life," replied the girl in a quiet voice. "And while I am now positive that my father has entirely regained his sanity, and looks with as great abhorrence upon the terrible fate he planned for me as I myself, I cannot forget the debt of gratitude which belongs to you. At the same time, I do not wish to be the means of making you unhappy, as surely would be the result were I to marry you without love. Let us wait until I know myself better. Though you have spoken to me of the matter before, I realize now that I have never made any effort to determine whether or not I really can love you. There is time enough before we reach civilization, if ever we are fortunate enough to do so at all. Will you not be as generous as you are brave, and give me a few days before I must make you a final answer?" With Professor Maxon's solemn promise to ensure his ultimate success, von Horn was very gentle and gracious in deferring to the girl's wishes. The girl, for her part, could not put from her mind the disappointment she had felt when she discovered that her rescuer was von Horn, and not the handsome young giant whom she had been positive was in close pursuit of her abductors. When number 13 had been mentioned, she had always pictured him as a hideous monster, similar to the creature that had seized her in the jungle beside the encampment that first day. She had seen the mysterious stranger, of whom she could obtain no information either from her father or von Horn. When she had recently insisted that the same man had been at the head of her father's creatures in an attempt to rescue her, both von Horn and Professor Maxon scoffed at the idea, until at last she was convinced that the fright and the firelight had conspired to conjure in her brain the likeness of one who was linked by memory to another time of danger and despair. Virginia could not understand why it was that the face of the stranger persisted in obtruding itself in her memory. That the man was unusually good-looking was undeniable, but she had known many good-looking men, nor was she especially impressionable to mere superficial beauty. No words had passed between them on the occasion of their first meeting, so it could have been nothing that he said which caused the memory of him to cling so tenaciously in her mind. What was it, then? Was it the memory of the moments that she had lain in his strong arms? Was it the shadow of the sweet, warm glow that had suffused her as his eyes had caught hers upon his face? The thing was tantalizing. It was annoying. The girl blushed in mortification at the very thought that she could cling so resolutely to the memory of a total stranger, and still greater humiliation, long in the secret depths of her soul, to see him again. She felt angry with herself, but the more she tried to forget the young giant who had come into her life for so brief an instant, the more she speculated upon his identity and the strange fate that had brought him to their little savage island, only to snatch him away again as mysteriously as he had come. The less was the approval with which she looked upon the suit of Dr. von Horn. Von Horn had left her, and strolled down to the river. Finally, Virginia arose to seek the crude couch which had been spread for her in one of the sleeping rooms of the Longhouse. As she passed, a group of natives squatted nearby. As she passed a group of natives squatted nearby, one of the number arose and approached her, and as she halted, half in fright, a low voice whispered, "Look out, Linny. Dr. Horn, very bad man." "Why, Sing," exclaimed Virginia, "what in the world do you mean by saying such a thing as that?" "Never mind, Linny. You are always good to old Sing. Sing does not like to see you sad. Dr. Horn is a very bad man. Oh, yes, he is." And without another word, Sing Lee turned and walked away. Oh, that was a short chapter. All right, but at least, he's kind of doing something now. Didn't deliver any any proof or recount any of the things that he knows. Just like, you might want to keep an eye out for yourself. But you know what? I think right now everyone needs to be keeping an eye out for themselves, because they are. All right, one second. I need to change the setting here. One second. Set that to 144. All right. Oh, 14. Oh, number 14 is in the box. Okay, I see what you're saying now, Rose. All right. Yeah, you're talking about that big treasure box. It might be. It might be. By the way, that was a great gift from Seven there yesterday. What's in the box? What's in the box? This treasure box, which everyone keeps going after. It's got to have something not valuable in it. It can't be something valuable. It's got to be, I don't know. Who knows what's going to be in it? I don't. But I'm pretty sure it's like, with the big deal that they've made about it. Just for the lulls, it's going to be something silly. Okay. Chapter 13. A Buried Treasure. After the escape of the girl, Borunda and Nanaka had fallen out over that affair, and the division of the treasure, with the result that the Panglama had slipped a knife between the ribs of his companion and dropped the body overboard. Borunda's followers, however, had been highly enraged at the act, and in the ensuing battle, which they waged for revenge of their murdered chief, Nanaka and his crew had been forced to take to the shore and hide in the jungle. With Baghdad Money is here. Good morning. Good morning, sir. Good morning. With difficulty, they had saved the chest and dragged it after them into the mazes of the underbrush. Finally, however, they succeeded in eluding the angry enemy and took up their march through the interior through the interior for the head of a river, which would lead them to the sea by another route, it being Nanaka's intention to dispose of the contents of the chest as quickly as possible through the assistance of a rascally Malay who dwelt at Gunung Tabor, where he carried on a thriving trade with pirates. There's an awful lot of rascally people around. He's used that word several times in this book. The rascal, and they tend to be Malays. All right. But presently it became apparent that he had not so easily escaped the fruits of his villainy as he had supposed, for upon the evening of the first day the rear of his little column was attacked by some of Borunda's warriors who had forged ahead of their fellows, with the result that the head of Nanaka's brother went to increase the prestige and glory of the house of the enemy. Nanaka was panic-stricken, since he knew that, hampered as he was by the heavy chest, he could neither fight nor run to advantage. And so, upon a dark night, near the headwaters of the river he sought, he buried the treasure at the foot of a mighty buttress tree, and with his parang made certain cabalistic signs upon the bole, whereby he might identify the spot when it was safe to return and disinter his booty. Then, with his men, he hastened down the stream until they reached the head of Prahu navigation, where they stole a craft and paddled swiftly on toward the sea. When the 3 bull orangutans closed upon Bulan, he felt no fear as to the outcome of the battle, for never in his experience had he coped with any muscles that his own mighty thews could not overcome. Oh, so now we're back to Bulan again. Good Lord. Jumping between characters like that, not good. Okay. They stole the boat, they're out to sea, now we're switching over to Bulan. When the 3 bull orangutans closed upon Bulan, he felt no fear as to the outcome of the battle, for never in his experience had he coped with any muscles that his own mighty thews could not overcome. But as the battle continued, he realized that there might be a limit to the number of antagonists which he could successfully withstand, since he could scarcely hope, with but 2 hands, to reach the throats of 3 enemies, or ward off the blows and clutches of 6 powerful hands, or the gnashing of 3 sets of savage fangs. When the truth dawned upon him that he was being killed, the instinct of self-preservation was born in him. The ferocity with which he had fought before paled into insignificance beside the mad fury with which he now attacked the 3 terrible creatures upon him. Shaking himself like a great lion, he freed his arms for a moment from the clinging embrace of his foemen, and seizing the neck of the nearest in his mighty clutch, wrenched the head completely around. There was one awful shriek from the tortured brute. The vertebrae parted with a snap, and Bulan's antagonists were reduced to 2. Lunging and struggling, the 3 combatants stumbled farther and farther into the jungle beyond the clearing. With mighty blows the man buffeted the beasts to left and right, but ever they returned in bestial rage to renew the encounter. Bulan was weakening rapidly under the terrific strain to which he had been subjected, and from loss of the blood which flowed from his wounds. Yet he was slowly mastering the foaming brutes, who themselves were torn and bleeding and exhausted. Weaker and weaker became the struggles of them all, when a sudden misstep sent Bulan stumbling head foremost against the stem of a tree, where, stunned, he sank unconscious, at the mercy of the relentless bulls. They had already sprung upon the prostrate form of their victim to finish what the accident had commenced, when the loud report of Singh's revolver smote upon their startled ears, as Sing Lee's bullet buried itself in the heart of number 10. What? Okay, so there's some there's got to be some flashback stuff happening here. Okay. Okay, so this is flashing back where Sing Lee had just shot number 10. Okay. Never had the orangutans heard the sound of a firearm, and the noise, seemingly in such close proximity, filled them with such terror that on the instant they forgot all else than this new and startling fear, and with headlong haste leaped away into the jungle, leaving Bulan lying where he had fallen. So it was that, though Sing passed within a few paces of the unconscious man, he neither saw nor heard aught of him or his antagonists. When Bulan returned to consciousness, the day was drawing to a close. He was stiff and sore and weak. His head ached horribly. He thought that he must indeed be dying, for how could one who suffered so revive? But at last he managed to stagger to his feet, and finally to reach the stream along which he had been traveling earlier in the day. Here he quenched his thirst and bathed his wounds, and as darkness came, he lay down to sleep upon a bed of matted grasses. The next morning found him refreshed and in considerably less pain, for the powers of recuperation, which belonged to his perfect health and mighty physique, had already worked an almost miraculous transformation in him. While he was hunting in the jungle for his breakfast, he came suddenly upon number 3 and number 12, similarly employed. At sight of him, the 2 creatures started to run away, but he called to them reassuringly, and they returned. On closer inspection, Bulan saw that both were covered with terrible wounds, and after questioning them, learned that they had fared almost as badly at the hands of the orangutans as had he. "Even the beasts loathe us," exclaimed number 12. "What are we to do?" "Leave the beasts alone, as I told you," replied Bulan. "Human beings hate us also," persisted number 12. "Then let us live by ourselves," suggested number 3. "We hate each other," retorted the pessimistic number 12. "There is no place for us in the world, and no companionship. We are but soulless things. "Stop!" cried Bulan. "I am not a soulless thing. I am a man, and within me is as fine and pure a soul as any man may own." And to his mind's eye came the vision of a fair face surmounted by a mass of loosely waving golden hair. But the brainless ones could not understand, and only shook their heads as they resumed their feeding, and forgot the subject. When the three had satisfied the cravings of their appetites, two of them were for lying down to sleep until it should be time to feed again, but Bulan, once more master, would not permit it, and forced them to accompany him in his seemingly futile search for the girl who had disappeared so mysteriously after he had rescued her from the orangutans. Both number 12 and number 3 had assured him that the beasts had not recaptured her, for they had seen the entire band flee madly through the jungle after hearing the report of the single shot which had so terrorized Bulan's antagonists. Bulan did not know what to make of this occurrence, which he himself had not heard, the shot having come after he had lost consciousness at the foot of the tree. But from the description of the noise given by number 12, he felt sure it must have been the report of a gun, and hoped that it betokened the presence of Virginia Maxon's friends, and that she was now safe in their keeping. Nevertheless, he did not relinquish his determination to continue his search for her, since it was quite possible that the gun had been fired by a native, many of whom possessed firearms. His first concern was for the girl's welfare, which spoke eloquently for the chivalry of his character, and though he wished to see her for the pleasure that it would give him, the hope of serving her was ever the first consideration in his mind. He was now confident that he was following the wrong direction, and with the intention in view of discovering the tracks of the party which had rescued or captured Virginia, after he had been forced to relinquish her, he set out in a totally new direction away from the river. His small woodcraft and little experience in traveling resulted in his being completely confused, so that instead of returning to the spot where he had last seen the girl, as he wished to do, he bore far to the northeast of the place, and missed entirely the path which von Horn and his Dyaks had taken from the Longhouse into the jungle and back. All that day he urged his reluctant companions on through the fearful heat of the tropics, until, almost exhausted, they halted at dusk upon the bank of a river, where they filled their stomachs with cooling draughts, and after eating lay down to sleep. It was quite dark when Bulan was aroused by the sound of something approaching from up the river, and as he lay listening, he presently heard the subdued voices of men conversing in whispers. He recognized the language as that of the Dyaks, though he could interpret nothing of which they said. Presently he saw a dozen warriors emerge into a little patch of moonlight. They bore a huge chest among them, which they deposited within a few paces of where Bulan lay. Then they commenced to dig in the soft earth with their spears and parangs until they had excavated a shallow pit. Into this they lowered the chest, covering it over with earth and sprinkling dead grass, twigs, and leaves above it, that it might present to a searcher no sign that the ground had been recently disturbed. The balance of the loose earth, which would not go back into the pit, was thrown into the river. When all had been made to appear as if it were before, one of the warriors made several cuts and scratches upon the stem of a tree which grew above the spot where the chest was buried. Then they hastened on in silence, past Bulan and down the river. Man, it is amazing how many times that has happened in this book, where people are just feet away from where the action is, just observing it. The coincidences are out of control. Yeah, right. Okay, and now it's cutting back to von Horn. Okay. As von Horn stood by the river's bank after his conversation with Virginia, he saw a small sampan approaching from upstream. In it he made out 2 natives, and the stealthiness of their approach caused him to withdraw into the shadow of a large prahu, which was beached close to where he had been standing. When the men had come close to the landing, one of them gave a low signal, and presently a native came down from the longhouse. "Who is it comes by night?" he asked, "and what want you?" "News has just reached us that Muda Safir is alive," replied one of the men in the boat, "and that he sleeps this night in your longhouse. Is this true?" "Yes," answered the man on shore. "What do you wish of the Rajah Muda Safir?" "Oh, we are men of his company, and we have news for him," returned the speaker in the sampan. "Tell him at once that we must speak to him." The native on shore returned to the longhouse without replying. Von Horn wondered what the important news for Muda Safir might be, and so he remained as he had been, concealed behind the prahu. Presently the old Malay came down to the water's edge, very warily though, and asked the men whom they might be. When they had given their names, he seemed relieved. "Nanaka," they said, "has murdered Barunda, who was taking the Rajah's treasure up to the Rajah's stronghold, the treasure which Nanaka had stolen after trying to murder the Rajah, and which Barunda had recaptured. Now Nanaka, after murdering Barunda, set off through the jungle toward the river which leads to Gunung Tibor, and Barunda's uncle followed him with what few men he had with him. But he sent us down river to try and find you, master, and beg of you to come with many men and overtake Nanaka, and punish him." Muda Safir thought for a moment. "Hasten back to the uncle of Barunda, and tell him that as soon as I can gather the warriors I shall come and punish Nanaka. I have another treasure here which I must not lose, but I can arrange that it will still be here when I return for it, and then Barunda's uncle can come back with me to assist me if assistance is needed. Also be sure to tell Barunda's uncle never to lose sight of the treasure." And Muda Safir turned and hastened back to the longhouse. As the men in the sampan headed the boat's bow upstream again, Von Horn ran along the jungle trail beside the river and abreast of the paddlers. When he thought that they were out of hearing of the longhouse, he hailed the 2. In surprise, the men ceased paddling. "Who are you, and what do you want?" asked one. "I am the man to whom the chest belongs," replied Von Horn. "If you will take me to Barunda's uncle before Muda Safir reaches him, you shall each have the finest rifles that the white man makes, with ammunition enough to last you a year. All I ask is that you guide me within sight of the party that pursues Nanaka. Then you may leave me, and tell no one what you have done, nor will I tell any. What say you?" The 2 natives consulted together in low tones. At last they drew nearer the shore. "Will you give us each a bracelet of brass, as well as the rifles?" asked the spokesman. Von Horn hesitated. He knew the native nature well. To have acquiesced too readily would have been to have invited still further demands from them. "Only the rifles and ammunition," he said at last, "unless you succeed in keeping the knowledge of my presence from both Barunda's uncle and Muda Safir. If you do that, you shall have the bracelets also." The prow of the sampan touched the bank. "Come," said one of the warriors. Von Horn stepped aboard. He was armed only with a brace of Colts, and he was going into the heart of the wild country of the head-hunters to pit his wits against those of the wily Muda Safir. His guides were 2 savage head-hunting warriors of a pirate crew from whom he hoped to steal what they considered a fabulously rich treasure. Whatever sins might be laid to the door of the doctor, there could be no question but that he was a very brave man. Von Horn's rash adventure had been suggested by the hope that he might, by bribing some of the natives with Borunda's uncle, make way with the treasure before Mudasafir arrived to claim it, or, failing that, learn its exact whereabouts that he might return for it with an adequate force later. That he was taking his life in his hands he well knew, but so great was the man's cupidity that he reckoned no risk too great for the acquirement of a fortune. He's going to look up cupidity. Greed for money or possessions. Cupidity. Okay. At first glance, I kind of assumed it had something to do with love. Right. The two, oh, I guess it does. There's a love of something. All right, the two Dyaks, paddling in silence up the dark river, proceeded for nearly 3 hours before they drew into the bank and dragged the sampan up into the bushes. Then they set out upon a narrow trail into the jungle. It so happened that after traveling for several miles, they inadvertently took another path than that followed by the party under Borunda's uncle, so that they passed the latter without being aware of it, going nearly half a mile to the right of where the trailers camped a short distance from the bivouac of Nanaka. In the dead of night, Nanaka and his party had crawled away, under the very noses of the avengers, taking the chest with them, and by chance Von Horn and two Dyaks cut back into the main trail, along the river, almost at the very point that Nanaka halted to bury the treasure. And so it was that Bulan was not the only one who watched the hiding of the chest. The coincidences just get... oh, boy. It's okay. All right. When Nanaka had disappeared down the river trail, Bulan lay speculating upon the strange actions he had witnessed. He wondered why the men should dig a hole in the midst of the jungle to hide away the box which he had so often seen in Professor Maxon's workshop. It occurred to him that it might be well to remember just where the thing was buried, so that he could lead the professor to it should he ever see the old man again. As he lay thus, half dozing, his attention was attracted by a stealthy rustling in the bushes nearby, and as he watched he was dumbfounded to see Von Horn creep out into the moonlight. A moment later the man was followed by two Dyaks. The three stood conversing in low tones, pointing repeatedly at the spot where the chest lay hidden. Bulan could understand but little of their conversation, but it was evident that Von Horn was urging some proposition to which the warriors demurred. Suddenly, without an instant's warning, Von Horn drew his gun, wheeled, and fired point-blank, first at one of his companions, then at the other. Both men fell in their tracks, and scarcely had the pungent odor of the powder smoke reached Bulan's nostrils ere the white man had plunged into the jungle and disappeared. Failing in his attempt to undermine the loyalty of the two Dyaks, Von Horn had chosen the only other way to keep the knowledge of the whereabouts of the chest from Borunda's uncle at Mudasafir. And now his principal interest in life was to escape the vengeance of the headhunters and return to the longhouse before his absence should be detected. There he could form a party of natives and set out to regain the chest after Mudasafir and Borunda's uncle had given up the quest. That suspicion should fall on him seemed scarcely credible, since the only men who knew that he had left the longhouse that night lay dead upon the very spot where the treasure reposed. Yeah. Okay, so then he's gone from complete and utter weasel to flat out killer now. That Von Horn, yeah. Boy, oh boy, I didn't think he was going to go that low. All right, but apparently he is. We're going to get into 14 in just a second. I'm just going to take a quick look, see where this thing actually ends. Looks like it's actually going to end at... yeah, it ends at 100. Ends at 100. All right. Okay. Chapter 14. Chapter 14. Okay, actually, I'm just going to have a little sip of water here. Going for almost an hour there. Good gracious. Good gracious. Alrighty. So far, so good. It's really picking up steam now, though. Here we go. Man or Monster, Chapter 14. When Mudasafir turned from the two Dyaks who had brought him news of the treasure, he hastened to the Longhouse, and arousing the chief of the tribe who domiciled there, explained that necessity required that the Rajah have at once 2 war prahus fully manned. Now the power of the crafty old Malay extended from one end of this great river on which the Longhouse lay, to the other, and though not all the tribes admitted allegiance to him, yet there were few who would not furnish him with men and boats when he required them. For his piratical cruises carried him often up and down the stream, and with his savage horde it was possible for him to wreak summary and terrible vengeance upon those who opposed him. When he had explained his wishes to the chief, the latter, though at heart hating and fearing Mudasafir, dared not refuse, but to a second proposition he offered strong opposition, until the Rajah threatened to wipe out his entire tribe should he not accede to his demands. The thing which the chief demurred to had occurred to Mudasafir, even as he walked back from the river after conversing with the 2 Dyak messengers. The thought of regaining the treasure, the while he administered punishment to the traitorous Nanaka, filled his soul with savage happiness. Now if he could but once more possess himself of the girl, and why not? There was only the sick old man, Sing Lee, and Von Horn to prevent it, and the chances were that they were all asleep. So he explained to the chief the plan that had so suddenly sprung to his wicked mind. 3 men with parangs may easily quiet the old man, his assistants, and Sing Lee, he said, and then we can take the girl along with us. The chief refused at first, point blank, to be a party to any such proceedings. He knew what had happened to the Sakaran Dyaks after they had murdered a party of Englishmen, and he did not purpose laying himself and his tribe open to the vengeance of the white men who came in many boats and with countless guns and cannon to take a terrible toll for every drop of white blood spilled. So it was that Mudasafir was forced to compromise and be satisfied with the chief's assistance in abducting the girl, for it was not so difficult a matter to convince the headhunter that she really had belonged to the Rajah, and that she had been stolen from him by the old man and the doctor. Virginia slept in a room with 3 Dyak women. It was to this apartment that the chief finally consented to dispatch 2 of his warriors. The men crept noiselessly within the pitch-dark interior until they came to the sleeping form of one of the Dyak women. Cautiously they awoke her. "Where is the white girl?" asked one of the men in a low whisper. "Mudasafir has sent us for her. Tell her that her father is very sick and wants her, but we do not mention Mudasafir's name, lest she might not come." The whispering awakened Virginia, and she lay wondering what the cause of the midnight conference might be, for she recognized that one of the speakers was a man, and there had been no man in the apartment when she had gone to sleep earlier in the night. Presently she heard someone approach her, and a moment later a woman's voice addressed her, but she could not understand enough of the native tongue to make out precisely the message the speaker wished to convey. The words "father," "sick," and "come," however, she finally understood after several repetitions, for she had picked up a smattering of the Dyak language during her enforced association with the natives. The moment that the possibilities suggested by these the moment that the possibilities suggested by these few words dawned upon her, she sprang. Oh no, that is the moment. The moment that the possibilities suggested by these few words dawned upon her, she sprang to her feet and followed the woman toward the door of the apartment. Immediately, without, the two warriors stood upon the veranda, awaiting their victim, and as Virginia passed through the doorway, she was seized roughly from either side. A heavy hand was clasped over her mouth, and before she could make even an effort to rebel, she had been dragged to the end of the veranda, down the notched log to the ground, and a moment later found herself in a war prahu, which was immediately pushed into the stream. Since Virginia had come to the longhouse after her rescue from the orangutans, supposedly by von Horn, Raja Muda Safir had... Since Virginia had come to the longhouse after her rescue from the orangutans, supposedly by von Horn, Raja Muda Safir had kept very much out of sight, for he knew that should... flip the page. For he knew that, should the girl see him, she would recognize him as the man who had stolen her from the Ithaca. So it came as a mighty shock to the girl when she heard the hated tones of the man whom she had knocked overboard from the prahu 2 nights before, and realized that the bestial Malay sat close beside her, and that she was again in his power. She looked now for no mercy, nor could she hope to again escape him so easily as she had before, and so she sat with bowed head in the bottom of the swiftly moving craft, buried in anguished thoughts, hopeless and miserable. Along the stretch of black river that the prahu and her consort covered that night, Virginia Maxon saw no living thing, other than a single figure in a small sampan which hugged the shadows of the shore as the 2 larger boats met and passed it, nor answered their hail. Where von Horn and his 2 Dayak guides had landed, Muda Safir's force disembarked and plunged into the jungle. Rapidly they hastened along the well-known trail toward the point designated by the 2 messengers, to come upon the spot almost immediately with the party under Barunda's uncle, who, startled by the 2 shots several hours previously, had been cautiously searching through the jungle for an explanation of them. Uh-oh. Why is Rose looking all shocked? What? What? They had gone warily, for fear that they might stumble upon Nanaka's party before Muda Safir arrived with reinforcements, and but just now had they discovered the prostrate forms of their 2 companions. One was dead, but the other was still conscious, and had just sufficient vitality left, after the coming of his fellows, to whisper that they had been treacherously shot by the younger white man who had been at the longhouse where they had found Muda Safir. Then the fellow expired without having an opportunity to divulge the secret hiding-place of the treasure, over the top of which his body lay. Now, Bulan had been an interested witness of all that transpired. At first he had been inclined to come out of his hiding-place and follow von Horn, but so much had already occurred beneath the branches of the great tree where the chest lay hidden that he decided to wait until morning at least, for he was sure that he had by no means seen the last of the drama which surrounded the heavy box. This belief was strengthened by the haste displayed by both Nanaka and von Horn to escape the neighborhood as quickly as possible. Oh, she's back in his power. Yeah. Was not expecting that. But everyone likes kidnapping the girl. It seems to be a favorite pastime. At least in Edgar Rice Burroughs' world. He decided to wait until morning, at least, for he was sure that he had by no means seen the last of the drama which surrounded the heavy box. This belief was strengthened by the haste displayed by both Nanaka and von Horn to escape the neighborhood as quickly as possible, as though they feared they might be apprehended should they delay even for a moment. Number 3 and Number 12 still slept, not having been aroused even by the shots fired by von Horn. Bulan himself had dozed after the departure of the doctor, but the advent of Burunda's uncle, with his followers, had awakened him, and now he lay wide-eyed and alert as the second party, under Muda Safir, came into view when they left the jungle trail and entered the clearing. His interest in either party was but passive until he saw the khaki blouse, short skirt, and trim leggings of the captive walking between two of the Dyaks of Muda Safir's company. At the same instant he recognized the evil features of the Rajah as those of the man who had directed the abduction of Virginia Maxon from the wrecked Ithaca. Like a great cat, Bulan drew himself cautiously to all fours, every nerve and muscle taut with the excitement of the moment. Before him stood 150 ferocious Borneo headhunters, armed with parangs, spears, and sumpatans. What's a sumpatan? No definition in this book. All right. At his back slept two almost brainless creatures. I'm just going to look it up real fast. Okay, it's a traditional weapon from Borneo. It's a combination of a spear and blowgun for discharging arrows. A spear and a blowgun for discharging arrows, which was used by the inhabitants of Borneo and adjacent islands. Right. There we go. Good stuff. And she's she's boy, she's trotting around in a khaki blouse and a short skirt. All right. That's what you wear in the jungle, I guess. Okay. Okay. At the same instant, he recognized the evil features of the Rajah as those of the man who had directed the abduction of Virginia Maxon from the wrecked Ithaca. Like a great cat, Bulan drew himself cautiously to all fours, every nerve and muscle taut with the excitement of the moment. Before him he saw 150 ferocious Borneo headhunters armed with parangs, spears, and sumpatans, and at his back slept two almost brainless creatures, his sole support against the awful odds he must face before he could hope to succor the divinity whose image was enshrined in his brave and simple heart. That's right, yeah, no mosquitoes round here. No mosquitoes. That's got to be nice. That reminds me. I stumbled across an article yesterday. Actually, it was about Disney World and how they overcame like mosquitoes there. Apparently, there's no mosquitoes around that area. I'm gonna have to see if I can find that article again. I just read the headline, didn't read it. The muscles stood out upon his giant forearm as he gripped the stock of his bullwhip. He believed that he was going to his death, for mighty as were his thews, he knew that in the face of the horde they would avail him little, yet he saw no other way than to sit supinely by while the girl went to her doom, and that he could not do. He nudged number 12. "Silence," he whispered, "and come, the girl is here. We must save her. Kill the men." And the same to the hairy and terrible number 3. Both the creatures awoke and rose to their hands and knees without noise that could be heard above the chattering of the natives who had crowded forward to view the dead bodies of von Horn's victims. Silently, Bulan came to his feet, the two monsters at his back rising and pressing close behind him. Along the denser shadows, the three crept to a position in the rear of the natives. The girl's guards had stepped forward with the others to join in the discussion that followed the dying statement of the murdered warrior, leaving her upon the outer fringe of the crowd. For an instant, a sudden hope of escape sprang to Virginia Maxon's mind. There was none between her and the jungle through which they had just passed. Though unknown dangers lurked in the black and uncanny depths of the dismal forest, would not death in any form be far preferable to the hideous fate which awaited her in the person of the bestial Malay pirate? She had turned to take the first step toward freedom when three figures emerged from the wall of darkness behind her. She saw the war caps, shields, and war coats, and her heart sank. Here were others of the Rajah's party, stragglers who had come just in time to thwart her plans. How large these men were! She had never seen a native of such giant proportions, and now they had come quite close to her, and as the foremost stooped to speak to her, she shrank back in fear. Then, to her surprise, she heard in whispered English, "Come quietly, while they are not looking." She thought the voice familiar, but could not place it, though her heart whispered that it might belong to the young stranger of her dreams. He reached out and took her hand, and together they turned and walked quickly toward the jungle, followed by the two who had accompanied them. Scarcely had they covered half the distance before one of the Dyaks, whose duty it had been to guard the girl, discovered that she was gone. With a cry he alarmed his fellows, and in another instant a sharp pair of eyes caught the movement of the four who had now broken into a run. With savage shouts the entire force of head-hunters sprang in pursuit. Bulan lifted Virginia in his arms and dashed on ahead of number 12 and number 3. A shower of poisoned darts, blown from 100 Sumpitans, fell about them, and then Mudasafir called to his warriors to cease using their deadly blowpipes, lest they kill the girl. Into the jungle dashed the four, while close behind them came the howling pack of enraged savages. Now one closed upon number 3, only to fall back dead with a broken neck as the giant fingers released their hold on him. A parang swung close to number 12, but his own, which he had now learned to wield with fearful effect, clove through the pursuing warrior's skull, splitting him wide to the breastbone. All of this while running forward full tilt. Nice. Thus they fought the while they forced their way deeper and deeper into the dark mazes of the entangled vegetation. The brunt of the running battle was borne by the two monsters, for Bulan was carrying Virginia and kept a little ahead of his companions to ensure the girl's greater safety. Now and then patches of moonlight, filtering through occasional openings in the leafy roofing, revealed to Virginia the battle that was being waged for possession of her, and once when number 3 turned toward her, after disposing of a new assailant, she was horrified to see the grotesque and terrible face of the creature. A moment later she caught sight of number 12's hideous face. She was appalled. Could it be that she had been rescued from the Malay to fall into the hands of creatures equally heartless and entirely without souls? She glanced up at the face of him who carried her. In the darkness of the night she had not yet an opportunity to see the features of the man, but after a glimpse at those of his two companions, she trembled to think of the hideous thing that might be revealed to her. Could it be that she had at last fallen into the hands of the dreaded and terrible number 13? Instinctively she shrank from contact with the man in whose arms she had been carried, without a trace of repugnance, until the thought obtruded itself that he might be the creature of her father's mad experimentation, to whose arms she had been doomed by the insane obsession of her parent. The man shifted her now to give himself freer use of his right arm, for the savages were pressing more closely upon 12 and 3, and the change made it impossible for the girl to see his face, even in the more frequent moonlit places. But she could see the two who ran and fought just behind them, and she shuddered at her inevitable fate. For should the 3 be successful in bearing her away from the Dyaks, she must face an unknown doom, while should the natives recapture her, there was the terrible Malay into whose clutches she had already twice fallen. Now the headhunters were pressing closer, and suddenly, even as the girl looked directly at him, a spear passed through the heart of number 3. Clutching madly at the shaft protruding from his misshapen body, the grotesque thing stumbled on for a dozen paces, and then sank to the ground, as 2 of the brown warriors sprang upon him with naked parangs. An instant later, Virginia Maxon saw the hideous and grisly head swinging high in the hand of a dancing, whooping savage. The man who carried her was now forced to turn and fight off the enemy that pressed forward past number 12. The mighty bullwhip whirled and cracked across the heads and faces of the Dyaks. It was a formidable weapon when backed by the Herculean muscles that rolled and shifted beneath Boulan's sun-tanned skin, and many were the brown warriors that went down beneath its cruel lash. Virginia could see that the creature who bore her was not deformed of body, but she shrank from the thought of what a sight his face might reveal. How much longer the 2 could fight off the horde at their heels the girl could not guess, and as a matter of fact she was indifferent to the outcome of the strange running battle that was being waged with herself as the victor's spoil. The country now was becoming rougher and more open. The flight seemed to be leading into a range of low hills, where the jungle grew less dense and the way rocky and rugged. They had entered a narrow canyon when number 12 went down beneath a half-dozen parangs. Again the girl saw a bloody head swung on high and heard the fierce, wild chorus of exulting victory. She wondered how long it would be ere the creature beneath her would add his share to the grim trophies of the hunt. In the interval that the headhunters had paused to sever number 12's head, Boulan had gained 50 yards upon them, and then of a sudden he came to a sheer wall rising straight across the narrow trail he had been following. Ahead there was no way. A cat could scarce have scaled that formidable barrier. But to the right he discovered what appeared to be a steep and winding pathway up the canyon side, and with a bound he clambered along it to where it surmounted the rocky wall. There he turned, winded, to await the oncoming foe. Here was a spot where a single man might defy an army, and Boulan had been quick to see the natural advantages of it. He placed the girl upon her feet behind a protruding shoulder of the canyon's wall, which rose to a considerable distance above them. Then he turned to face the mob that was surging up the narrow pathway toward him. At his feet lay an accumulation of broken rock from the hillside above, and as a spear sped... Okay, I got it. At his feet lay an accumulation of broken rock from the hillside above, and as a spear sped, singing, close above his shoulder, the occurrence suggested a use for the rough and jagged missiles which lay about him in such profusion. Many of the pieces were large, weighing 20 and 30 pounds, some even as much as 50. Picking up one of the larger, Boulan raised it high above his head and then hurled it down amongst the up-climbing warriors. In an instant pandemonium reigned, for the heavy boulder had mowed down a score of the pursuers, breaking arms and legs in its meteoric descent. Missile after missile Boulan rained down upon the struggling, howling Dyaks, until, seized by panic, they turned and fled incontinently down into the depths of the canyon and back along the narrow trail they had come. And then superstitious fear completed the rout that the flying rocks had started, for one whispered to another that this was the terrible Boulan, and that he had but lured them on into the hills that he might call forth all his demons and destroy them. For a moment Boulan stood, watching the retreating savages, a smile upon his lips, and then as the sudden equatorial dawn burst forth, he turned to face the girl. As Virginia Maxon saw the fine features of the giant, where she had expected to find the grotesque and hideous lineaments of a monster, she gave a quick little cry of pleasure and relief. "Thank God," she cried fervently. "Thank God that you are a man. I thought I was in the clutches of the hideous and soulless monster number 13. The smile upon the young man's face died. An expression of pain and hopelessness and sorrow swept across his features. The girl saw the change, and wondered, but how could she guess the grievous wound her words had inflicted? Yeah. All right. Okay, then that leaves 3 chapters to go. 3 chapters to go. So yeah, so we'll finish those 3 chapters on Monday. I'm just going to take a minute here to. There's no chat to catch up on. All right, that's okay. But yeah, and we'll find a suitable short story or two to read. There we go. All right. Phew. Short stories are good, says Baghdad Money. Indeed they are. They're a favorite of mine. So we need something which will take about 40 minutes. Actually, we could read one of. Well, I've read it before. Oh, actually, actually, we have read The Temple. I don't have that here. The Ning Nang Nong. Good Lord. One second. Let's see. Boop. Where is it? Oh, they don't have the whole thing there. All right, there we go. I found it. I should know it by heart. Good Lord, no. Okay, I got it. I found it. All right, so this is by Spike Milligan. This one's for Shadowtronics, who's pulling his birthday card. Good Lord. There we go. This is by Spike Milligan. Spike Milligan. On the Ning Nang Nong, where the cows go bong, and the monkeys all say boo, there's a Nong Nang Ning, where the trees go ping, and the treetops jibber jabber jew. On the Nong Ning Nang, all the mice go clang, and you just can't catch 'em when they do. So it's Ning Nang Nong, the cows go bong, Nong Nang Ning, the trees go ping, Nong Ning Nang, the mice go clang. What a noisy place to belong is the Ning Nang Nong. That is it. That was a short. Okay, all right. But it's Spike Milligan. What more do you need? Spike Milligan. Where are we at? We were looking at this. Here we go. All right. Yes. Here's okay. We got 35 minutes to go, something like that. All right. Oh yeah, I see we got several people in here. Yay! If you're new to the stream here, yeah, you can say hi. You can say hi in chat. We're all pretty friendly around here. If you're liking the stream, maybe throw down a little thumbs up. Oh yeah, actually something else I meant to mention as well. Yeah, if anyone ever wants to leave a comment on any of the things that we've done, go right ahead with that as well, because those all help the analytics. Not insisting on the Raven, too. No. What? What, you want the Raven? We just did the Raven last week. Good gracious. Man. If we've got time for it after the temple. The temple. The temple. Manuscript found on the coast of Yucatan. On August 20, 1917, I, Karl Heinrich Graf von Altberg, Ehrenstein, Lieutenant Commander in the Imperial German Navy and in charge of the submarine U-29, deposit this bottle and record in the Atlantic Ocean at a point to me unknown, but probably about north latitude 20 degrees, west longitude 35 degrees, where my ship lies disabled on the ocean floor. I do so because of my desire to set certain unusual facts before the public, a thing I shall not in all probability survive to accomplish in person, since the circumstances surrounding me are as menacing as they are extraordinary, and involve not only the hopeless crippling of the U-29, but the impairment of my own German will in a manner most disastrous. On the afternoon of June 18, as reported by the wireless to the U-61, bound for Kiel, we torpedoed the British freighter Victory, New York, to Liverpool, in north latitude 45 degrees 16 minutes, west longitude 28 degrees 34 minutes, permitting the crew to leave in boats in order to obtain a good cinema view for the Admiralty records. The ship sank quite picturesquely, bow first, the stern rising high out of the water, whilst the hull shot down perpendicularly to the bottom of the sea. Our camera missed nothing, and I regret that so fine a reel of film should never reach Berlin. After that, we sank the lifeboats with our guns and submerged. When we rose to the surface about sunset, a seaman's body was found on the deck, hands gripping the railing in curious fashion. The poor fellow was young, rather dark, very handsome, probably an Italian or Greek, and undoubtedly of the Victory's crew. He had evidently sought refuge on the very ship which had been forced to destroy his own, one more victim of the unjust war of aggression which the English pig-dogs are waging upon the fatherland. Our men searched him for souvenirs, and found in his coat pocket a very odd bit of ivory, carved to represent a youth's head crowned with laurel. My fellow officer, Lieutenant Klenze, believed that the thing was of great age and artistic value, so took it from the men for himself. How it had ever come into the possession of a common sailor, neither he nor I could imagine. As the dead man was thrown overboard, there occurred 2 incidents which created much disturbance among the crew. The fellow's eyes had been closed, but in the dragging of his body to the rail they were jarred open, and many seemed to entertain a queer delusion that they gazed steadily and mockingly at Schmidt and Zimmer, who were bent over the corpse. The boatswain, Müller, an elderly man who would have known better had he not been a superstitious Alsatian swine, became so excited by this impression that he watched the body in the water, and swore that after it sank a little, it drew its limbs into a swimming position and sped away to the south under the waves. Klenze and I did not like these displays of peasant ignorance, and severely reprimanded the men, particularly Müller. The next day, a very troublesome situation was created by the indisposition of the indisposition. The next day, a very troublesome situation was created by the indisposition of some of the crew. They were evidently suffering from the nervous strain of our long voyage, and had had bad dreams. Several seemed quite dazed and stupid, and after satisfying myself that they were not feigning their weakness, I excused them from their duties. The sea was rather rough, so we descended to a depth where the waves were less troublesome. Here we were comparatively calm, despite a somewhat puzzling southward current, which we could not identify from our oceanographic charts. The moans of the sick men were decidedly annoying, but since they did not appear to demoralize the rest of the crew, we did not resort to extreme measures. It was our plan to remain where we were and intercept the liner Dacia, mentioned in information from agents in New York. In the early evening we rose to the surface and found the sea less heavy. The smoke of a battleship was on the northern horizon, but our distance and ability to submerge made us safe. What worried us more was the talk of Boatswain Muller, which grew wilder as night came on. He was in a detestably childish state, and babbled of some illusion of dead bodies drifting past the undersea portholes, bodies which looked at him intensely, and which he recognized, in spite of bloating, as having seen dying during some of our victorious German exploits. And he said that the young man we had found and tossed overboard was their leader. This was very gruesome and abnormal, so we confined Muller in irons and had him soundly whipped. The men were not pleased at his punishment, but discipline was necessary. We also denied the request of a delegation, headed by Seaman Zimmer, that the curious carved ivory head be cast into the sea. On June 20, Seamen Bohm and Schmidt, who had been ill the day before, became violently insane. I regretted that no physician was included in our complement of officers, since German lives are precious, but the constant ravings of the two concerning a terrible curse were most subversive of discipline, so drastic steps were taken. The crew accepted the event in a sullen fashion, but it seemed to quiet Muller, who thereafter gave us no trouble. In the evening we released him, and he went about his duties silently. In the week that followed, we were all very nervous, watching for the Dacia. The tension was aggravated by the disappearance of Muller and Zimmer, who undoubtedly committed suicide as a result of the fears which seemed to harass them, though they were not observed in the act of jumping overboard. I was rather glad to be rid of Muller, for even his silence had unfavorably affected the crew. Everyone seemed inclined to be silent now, as though holding a secret fear. Many were ill, but none made a disturbance. Lieutenant Klenzer chafed under the strain, and was annoyed by the merest trifles, such as the school of dolphins which gathered about the U-29 in increasing numbers, and the growing intensity of that southward current which was not on our chart. It at length became apparent that we had missed the Dacia altogether. Such failures are not uncommon, and we were more pleased than disappointed, since our return to Wilhelmshaven was now in order. At noon, June 28, we turned northeastward, and despite having some rather comical entanglements with the usual masses of dolphins, were soon under way. The explosion in the engine room at 2 p.m. was wholly a surprise. No defect in the machinery or carelessness in the men had been noticed, yet without warning the ship was racked from end to end with a colossal shock. Lieutenant Klenzer hurried to the engine room, finding the fuel tank and most of the mechanism shattered, and engineers Rabe and Schneider instantly killed. Our situation had suddenly become grave indeed, for though the chemical air regenerators were intact, and though we could use the devices for raising and submerging the ship and opening the hatches, as long as compressed air and storage batteries might hold out, we were powerless to propel or guide the submarine. To seek rescue in the lifeboats would be to deliver ourselves into the hands of enemies unreasonably embittered against our great German nation, and our wireless had failed ever since the Victory affair to put us in touch with a fellow U-boat of the Imperial Navy. From the hour of the accident till July 2, we drifted constantly to the south, almost without plans, and encountering no vessels. Dolphins still encircled the U-29, a somewhat remarkable circumstance, considering the distance we had covered. On the morning of July 2nd, we sighted a warship flying American colors, and the men became very restless in their desire to surrender. Finally, Lieutenant Klenzer had to shoot a seaman named Traube, who urged this un-German act with especial violence. This quieted the crew for the time, and we submerged unseen. The next afternoon, a dense flock of seabirds appeared from the south, and the ocean began to heave ominously. Closing our hatches, we awaited developments until we realized that we must either submerge or be swamped in the mounting waves. Our air pressure and electricity were diminishing, and we wished to avoid all unnecessary use of our slender mechanical resources, but in this case there was no choice. We did not descend far, and when, after several hours, the sea was calmer, we decided to return to the surface. Here, however, a new trouble developed, for the ship failed to respond to our direction, in spite of all that the mechanics could do. As the men grew more and more frightened at this undersea imprisonment, some of them began to mutter again about Lieutenant Klenz's ivory image, but the sight of an automatic pistol calmed them. We kept the poor devils as busy as we could, tinkering at the machinery, even when we knew it was useless. Klenzer and I usually slept at different times, and it was during my sleep, about 5 a.m., July 4th, that the general mutiny broke loose. The 6 remaining pigs of seamen, suspecting that we were lost, had suddenly burst into a mad fury at our refusal to surrender to the Yankee battleship 2 days before, and were in a delirium of cursing and destruction. They roared like the animals they were, and broke instruments and furniture indiscriminately, screaming about such nonsense as the curse of the ivory image and the dark dead youth who had looked at them and swam away. Lieutenant Klenzer seemed paralyzed and inefficient, as one might expect of a soft, womanish Rhinelander. I shot all 6 men, for it was necessary, and made sure that none remained alive. We expelled the bodies through the double hatches and were alone in the U-29. Klenzer seemed very nervous and drank heavily. It was decided that we remain alive as long as possible, using the large stock of provisions and chemical supply of oxygen, none of which had suffered from the crazy antics of those swine-hound seamen. Our compasses, depth gauges, and other delicate instruments were ruined, so that henceforth our only reckoning would be guesswork, based on our watches, the calendar, and our apparent drift, as judged by any objects we might spy through the portholes or from the conning tower. Fortunately, we had storage batteries still capable of long use, both for interior lighting and for the searchlight. We often cast a beam round the ship, but saw only dolphins, swimming parallel to our own drifting course. I was scientifically interested in those dolphins, for though the ordinary Delphinus delphis is a cetacean mammal, unable to subsist without air, I watched one of the swimmers closely for 2 hours, and did not see him alter his submerged condition. With the passage of time, Klenzer and I decided that we were still drifting south, meanwhile sinking deeper and deeper. We noted the marine fauna and flora, and read much on the subject in the books I had carried with me for spare moments. I could not help observing, however, the inferior scientific knowledge of my companion. His mind was not Prussian, but given to imaginings and speculations which have no value. The fact of our coming death affected him curiously, and he would frequently pray in remorse over the men, women, and children we had sent to the bottom, forgetting that all things are noble which serve the German state. After a time, he became noticeably unbalanced, gazing for hours at his ivory image and weaving fanciful stories of the lost and forgotten things under the sea. Sometimes, as a psychological experiment, I would lead him on in these wanderings and listen to his endless poetical quotations and tales of sunken ships. I was very sorry for him, for I disliked to see a German suffer, but he was not a good man to die with. For myself, I was proud, knowing how the fatherland would revere my memory, and how my sons would be taught to be men like me. On August 9, we espied the ocean floor, and sent a powerful beam from the searchlight over it. It was a vast, undulating plain, mostly covered with seaweed, and strewn with the shells of small mollusks. Here and there were slimy objects of puzzling contour, draped with weeds and encrusted with barnacles, which Clenser declared must be ancient ships lying in their graves. He was puzzled by one thing, a peak of solid matter, protruding above the ocean bed nearly 4 feet at its apex, about 2 feet thick, with flat sides and smooth upper surfaces which met at very obtuse angles. I called the peak a bit of outcropping rock, but Clenser thought he saw carvings on it. After a while he began to shudder, and turned away from the scene as if frightened, yet could give no explanation save that he was overcome with the vastness, darkness, remoteness, antiquity, and mystery of the oceanic abyss. His mind was tired, but I am always a German, and was quick to notice 2 things: that the U-29 was standing the deep-sea pressure splendidly, and that the peculiar dolphins were still about us, even at a depth where the existence of high organisms is considered impossible by most naturalists. That I had previously overestimated our depth, I was sure, but none the less we must still be deep enough to make these phenomena remarkable. Our southward speed, as gauged by the ocean floor, was about as I had estimated from the organisms passed at higher levels. It was 3:15 p.m., August 12, that poor Clenser went wholly mad. He had been in the conning tower, using the searchlight, when I saw him bound into the library compartment where I sat reading, and his face at once betrayed him. I will repeat here what he said, underlining the words he emphasized. "He's calling! He's calling! I hear him! We must go!" As he spoke, he took his ivory image from the table, pocketed it, seized my arm in an effort to drag me up the companionway to the deck. In a moment I understood that he meant to open the hatch and plunge with me into the water outside, a vagary of suicide and homicidal mania for which I was scarcely prepared. As I hung back and attempted to soothe him, he grew more violent, saying, "Come now, do not wait until later. It is better to repent and be forgiven than to defy and be condemned." Then I tried the opposite of the soothing plan, and told them that he was mad, pitifully demented. But he was unmoved, and cried, "If I am mad, it is mercy. May the gods pity the man who in his callousness can remain sane to the hideous end. Come and be mad while he still calls with mercy." This outburst seemed to relieve a pressure in his brain, for as he finished he grew much milder, asking me to let him depart alone if I would not accompany him. My course at once became clear. He was a German, but only a Rhinelander and a commoner, and he was now a potential dangerous madman. By complying with his suicidal request, I could immediately free myself from one who was no longer a companion, but a menace. I asked him to give me the ivory image before he went, but this request brought from him such uncanny laughter that I did not repeat it. Then I asked him if he wished to leave any keepsake or lock of hair for his family in Germany in case I should be rescued. But again he gave me that strange laugh. So as he climbed the ladder, I went to the levers and allowing proper time intervals, operated the machinery which sent him to his death. After I saw that he was no longer in the boat, I threw the searchlight around the water in an effort to obtain a last glimpse of him, since I wished to ascertain whether the water pressure would flatten him, as it theoretically should, or whether the body would be unaffected, like those extraordinary dolphins. I did not, however, succeed in finding my late companion, for the dolphins were massed thickly and obscuringly about the conning tower. That evening I regretted that I had not taken the ivory image surreptitiously from poor Clentz's pocket as he left, for the memory of it fascinated me. I could not forget the youthful, beautiful head with its leafy crown, though I am not by nature an artist. I was also sorry that I had no one with whom to converse. Clenzer, though not my mental equal, was much better than no one. I did not sleep well that night, and wondered exactly when the end would come. Surely I had little enough chance of rescue. The next day I ascended to the conning tower and commenced the customary searchlight explorations. Northward the view was much the same as it had been all the 4 days since we had sighted the bottom, but I perceived that the drifting of the U-29 was less rapid. As I swung the beam around to the south, I noticed that the ocean floor ahead fell away in a marked declivity and bore curiously regular blocks of stone in certain places, dispersed as if in accordance with definite patterns. Good morning, Chris. Yeah, good to see you, man. How you doing? The boat did not at once descend to match the greater ocean depth, so I was soon forced to adjust the searchlight to cast a sharply downward beam. Owing to the abruptness of the change, a wire was disconnected, which necessitated a delay of many minutes for repair, but at length the light streamed on again, flooding the marine valley below me. I am not given to emotion of any kind, but my amazement was very great when I saw what lay in that electrical glow. And yet, as one reared in the best Kultur of Prussia, I should not have been amazed, for geology and tradition alike tell us of great transpositions in oceanic and continental areas. What I saw was an extended and elaborate array of ruined edifices, all of magnificent though unclassified architecture, and in various stages of preservation. And Dahlia's here as well. Good morning, Dahlia. Good morning. All of magnificent though unclassified architecture, and in various stages of preservation. Most appeared to be of marble, gleaming whitely in the rays of the searchlight, and the general plan was of a large city at the bottom of a narrow valley, with numerous isolated temples and villas on the steep slopes above. Roofs were fallen, and columns were broken, but there still remained an air of immemorially ancient splendor, which nothing could efface. Confronted at last with the Atlantis I had formerly deemed largely a myth, I was the most eager of explorers. At the bottom of that valley a river once had flowed, for as I examined the scene more closely, I beheld the remains of stone and marble bridges and sea walls, and terraces and embankments once verdant and beautiful. In my enthusiasm, I became nearly as idiotic and sentimental as poor Clenzer, and was very tardy in noticing that the southward current had ceased at last, allowing the U-29 to settle slowly down upon the sunken city, as an aeroplane settles upon a town of the upper earth. I was slow, too, in realizing that the school of unusual dolphins had vanished. 7 stories of the Snow Queen. The Snow Queen. Well, that sounds like fun. Sounds pretty good. Just getting re-comfy here, man. I need a different chair in here. In about 2 hours, the boat rested in a paved plaza close to the rocky wall of the valley. On one side I could view the entire city as it sloped from the plaza down to the old river bank. On the other side, in startling proximity, I was confronted by the richly ornate and perfectly preserved facade of a great building, evidently a temple, hollowed from the solid rock. Of the original workmanship of this titanic thing I can only make conjectures. The facade, of immense magnitude, apparently covers a continuous hollow recess, for its windows are many and widely distributed. In the center yawns a great open door, reached by an impressive flight of steps, and surrounded by exquisite carvings like the figures of bacchanals in relief. Foremost of all are the great columns and frieze, both decorated with sculptures of inexpressible beauty, obviously portraying idealized pastoral scenes and processions of priests and priestesses bearing strange ceremonial devices in adoration of a radiant god. The art is of the most phenomenal perfection, largely Hellenic in idea, yet strangely individual. It imparts an impression of terrible antiquity, as though it were the remotest rather than the immediate ancestor of Greek art. Nor can I doubt that every detail of this massive product was fashioned from the virgin hillside rock of our planet. It is palpably a part of the valley wall, though how the vast interior was ever excavated I cannot imagine. Perhaps a cavern or series of caverns furnished the nucleus. Neither age nor submersion has corroded the pristine grandeur of this awful fane, for fane indeed it must be. And today, after thousands of years, it rests untarnished and inviolate in the endless night and silence of an ocean chasm. Yeah. Yeah, can't go wrong with Hans Christian Andersen. I cannot reckon the number of hours I spent in gazing at the sunken city, with its buildings, arches, statues, and bridges, and the colossal temple with its beauty and mystery. Though I knew that death was near, my curiosity was consuming, and I threw the searchlight's beam about in eager quest. The shaft of light permitted me to learn many details, but refused to show anything within the gaping door of the rock-hewn temple. And after a time I turned off the current, conscious of the need of conserving power. The rays were now perceptibly dimmer than they had been during the weeks of drifting. And as if sharpened by the coming deprivation of light, my desire to explore the watery secrets grew. I, a German, should be the first to tread those eon-forgotten ways. I produced and examined a deep-sea diving suit of joined metal and experimented with the portable light and air regenerator. Though I should have trouble in managing the double hatches alone, I believed I could overcome all obstacles with my scientific skill and actually walk about the dead city in person. On August 16, I effected an exit from the U-29 and laboriously made my way through the ruined and mud-choked streets to the ancient river. I found no skeletons or other human remains, but gleaned a wealth of archaeological lore from sculptures and coins. Of this I cannot now speak, save to utter my awe at a culture in the full noon of glory, when cave-dwellers roamed Europe, and the Nile flowed unwatched to the sea. Others, guided by this manuscript, if it shall ever be found, must unfold the mysteries at which I can only hint. I returned to the boat as my electric batteries grew feeble, resolved to explore the rock temple on the following day. Oh yes, it's been full of that. This is it's being narrated by a German submarine commander in 1917. Not a very nice one either. Not a very nice one. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. On the 17th, as my impulse to search out the mystery of the temple waxed still more insistent, a great disappointment befell me, for I found that the materials needed to replenish the portable light had perished in the mutiny of those pigs in July. My rage was unbounded, yet my German sense forbade me to venture unprepared into an utterly black interior which might prove the lair of some indescribable marine monster, or a labyrinth of passages from whose windings I could never extricate myself. All I could do was to turn on the waning searchlight of the U-29 and with its aid walk up the temple steps and study the exterior carvings. The shaft of light entered the door at an upward angle, and I peered in to see if I could glimpse anything. But all in vain. Not even the roof was visible, and though I took a step or two inside after testing the floor with a staff, I dared not go further. Moreover, for the first time in my life, I experienced the emotion of dread. I began to realize how some of poor Clence's moods had arisen, for as the temple drew me more and more, I feared its aqueous abysses with a blind and mounting terror. Returning to the submarine, I turned off the lights and sat, thinking in the dark. Electricity must now be saved for emergencies. Saturday the 18th I spent in total darkness, tormented by thoughts and memories that threatened to overcome my German will. Clencer had gone mad and perished before reaching this sinister remnant of a past unwholesomely remote, and had advised me to go with them. Was indeed fate preserving my reason, only to draw me irresistibly to an end more horrible and unthinkable than any man has dreamed of? Clearly, my nerves were sorely taxed, and I must cast off these impressions of weaker men. I could not sleep Saturday night, and turned on the lights, regardless of the future. It was annoying that the electricity should not last out the air and provisions. I revived my thoughts of euthanasia, and examined my automatic pistol. Toward morning I must have dropped asleep with the lights on, for I awoke in darkness yesterday afternoon to find the batteries dead. I struck several matches in succession, and desperately regretted the improvidence which had caused us long ago to use up the few candles we carried. After the fading of the last match I dared to waste, I sat very quietly, without a light. As I considered the inevitable end, my mind ran over preceding events, and developed a hitherto dormant impression which would have caused a weaker and more superstitious man to shudder. The head of the radiant god in the sculptures on the rock temple is the same as that carven bit of ivory which the dead sailor brought from the sea, and which poor Clencer carried back into the sea. I was a little dazed by this coincidence, but did not become terrified. It is only the inferior thinker who hastens to explain the singular and complex by the primitive shortcut of supernaturalism. The coincidence was strange, but I was too sound a reasoner to connect circumstances which admit of no logical connection, or to associate in any uncanny fashion the disastrous events which had led from the Victory affair to my present plight. Feeling the need of more rest, I took a sedative and secured some more sleep. My nervous condition was reflected in my dreams, for I seemed to hear the cries of drowning persons, and to see dead faces pressing against the portholes of the ship. And among the dead faces was the living, mocking face of the youth with the ivory image. Read some Twilight. I've never read them. I've never seen a Twilight movie either. I don't know. They're going to be popular for a reason, though. I must be careful how I record my awaking today, for I am unstrung, and much hallucination is necessarily mixed with fact. Psychologically, my case is most interesting, and I regret that it cannot be observed scientifically by a competent German authority. Upon opening my eyes, my first sensation was an overmastering desire to visit the rock temple, a desire which grew every instant, yet which I automatically sought to resist through some emotion of fear, which operated in the reverse direction. Next there came to me the impression of light amidst the darkness of dead batteries, and I seemed to see a sort of phosphorescent glow in the water, through the porthole which opened toward the temple. This aroused my curiosity, for I knew of no deep-sea organism capable of emitting such luminosity. But before I could investigate, there came a third impression, which, because of its irrationality, caused me to doubt the objectivity of anything my senses might record. It was an aural delusion, a sensation of rhythmic, melodic sound, as of some wild yet beautiful chant or choral hymn, coming from the outside through the absolutely soundproof hull of the U-29. Anya's off to a meeting. All right. Okay. All right. Very well. Have a great day there, Anya. Got to get that work done. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing actually one of the Twilight movies just to see what it's all about. Convinced of my psychological and nervous abnormality, I lighted some matches and poured a stiff dose of sodium bromide solution, which seemed to calm me to the extent of dispelling the illusion of sound. But the phosphorescence remained, and I had difficulty in repressing a childish impulse to go to the porthole and seek its source. It was horribly realistic, and I could soon distinguish by its aid the familiar objects around me, as well as the empty sodium bromide glass, of which I had had no former visual impression in its present location. The last circumstance made me ponder, and I crossed the room and touched the glass. It was indeed in the place where I had seemed to see it. Now I knew that the light was either real or part of an hallucination so fixed and consistent that I could not hope to dispel it. So, abandoning all resistance, I ascended to the conning tower to look for the luminous agency. Might it not actually be another U-boat, offering possibilities of rescue? It is well that the reader accept nothing which follows as objective truth, for since the events transcend natural law, they are necessarily the subjective and unreal creations of my overtaxed mind. When I attained the conning tower, I found the sea in general far less luminous than I had expected. There was no animal or vegetable phosphorescence about, and the city that sloped down to the river was invisible in blackness. What I did see was not spectacular, nor grotesque or terrifying, yet it removed my last vestige of trust in my consciousness. For the door and windows of the undersea temple, hewn from the rocky hill, were vividly aglow with a flickering radiance, as from a mighty altar flame far within. Later incidents are chaotic. As I stared at the uncannily lighted door and windows, I became subject to the most extravagant visions so extravagant that I cannot even relate them. I fancied that I discerned objects in the temple, objects both stationary and moving, and seemed to hear again the unreal chant that had floated to me when first I awaked. And over all rose thoughts and fears which scented in the youth from the sea, and the ivory image whose carving was duplicated on the frieze and columns of the temple before me. I thought of poor Cleanser, and wondered where his body rested, with the image he had carried back into the sea. He had warned me of something, and I had not heeded. But he was a soft-headed Rhinelander, who went mad at troubles a Prussian could bear with ease. The rest is very simple. My impulse to visit and enter the temple has now become an inexplicable and imperious command, which ultimately cannot be denied. My own German will no longer control my acts, and volition is henceforward possible only in minor matters. Such madness it was which drove Clenser to his death, bareheaded and unprotected in the ocean. But I am a Prussian and a man of sense, and will use to the last what little will I have. When first I saw that I must go, I prepared my diving suit, helmet, and air regenerator for instant donning, and immediately commenced to write this hurried chronicle in the hope that it may some day reach the world. I shall seal the manuscript in a bottle and entrust it to the sea, as I leave the U-29 forever. I have no fear, not even from the prophecies of the madman Clenser. What I have seen cannot be true, and I know that this madness of my own will at most lead only to suffocation when my air is gone. The light in the temple is a sheer delusion, and I shall die calmly, like a German, in the black and forgotten depths. This demoniac laughter which I hear as I write comes only from my own weakening brain. So I will carefully don my diving suit, and walk boldly up the steps into that primal shrine, that silent secret of unfathomed waters and uncounted years. And that is how that one ends. Dahlia sent some pics on Discord. Ah, very nice, very nice. Oh, excuse me. Oh, man, oh man, oh man. Alrighty. Oh boy, oh boy. Yep, I'll check them out when I get back next door. I'm on my other PC over here. Over next door. Man, oh man. That was pretty good. I thought pretty good. Sneaking that in. Yeah, so yeah, we'll be... oh, you're welcome, Dahlia. You're welcome. Yeah, we're going to pick up with the final 3 chapters of The Monster Men on Monday. Man, crazy book. Absolutely crazy book. And yeah, we will have... there will be more. There will be more. More short stories and the like. Oh, yeah. Okay, actually, before we go, let's see, where is it? 1 second. Oh, I feel so tired. Why am I so tired? Oh, I don't think Poe is on this one. Yeah, I'm, all right. Yeah, it is. It is noon here. It is noon here. All right. Yeah, I just had to download this real fast. It wasn't on this. Oh, and the formatting's all way different. Wow, that's really weird. Don't know how it ended up like that. Okay, this is okay. This is for Shadow. We read this last week, but it's his birthday and he's pulling his birthday card. So all right, okay, yeah. Get this done. Oh, you were here. You were here for a bit too yesterday, there, Rose. Very nice. Very nice. Okay, here we go. Let's. This is. Let's see. This is for William. The Simpsons one. Yeah. Quote the Raven, eat my shorts. Here we go. The Raven. Once, upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow. Sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here for evermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before. So that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger. Hesitating, then no longer, "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you." Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortals ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see, then, what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door. Perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. Perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marvelled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing further than he uttered, not a feather then he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, "Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before." Then the bird said, "Nevermore." Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, "Doubtless," said I, "what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast, and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of nevermore." But the raven, still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. "Wretch," I cried, "thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite in nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh, quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." "Prophet," said I, "thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate and all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." "Prophet," said I, "thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by the God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Iden it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." "Be that word our sign in parting, bird or fiend," I shrieked, upstarting. "Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul have spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. Yeah, it's a bit of a downer, Somewhere, someone is looking for their bird. Maybe, yeah, their talking bird, talking raven. I don't. Can ravens do that? Like I don't know, like parrots. Parrots can do a few words mechanically. Don't know. Don't know if a raven can or not. Might have to look into it. Yeah, there we go. But that's it. Boy, okay, we're 20 minutes over time. That's fine. It's all good. We had a good read. Got through 3 more chapters of The Monster Men by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Then The Ning Nang Nong for William. Ning Nang Nong by Spike Milligan. Then The Temple by H.P. Lovecraft. And then The Raven. The raven, everyone knows that. Supposedly ravens can mimic any sound. Okay. Interesting. Hey there, Chris. You have a friend who heard a raven mimicking a chainsaw. Oh, okay, interesting. But that is it. Okay, so this is the Monday through Thursday show, so we'll be back on Monday with the final 3 chapters of The Monster Man. And then, we'll start a brand new novel on the Tuesday. So Monday through Thursday in the mornings. Gaming is coming up tonight, Thursday through Sunday. Yeah, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll be kicking off with some FIFA soccer, FIFA 20 in particular. In case anyone wants to get in on that, FIFA 20, because that is on EA Access, and EA Access has been rolled into Game Pass Ultimate. So if you have Game Pass Ultimate, you can download they're not the latest versions of it, but like 1 year before. So FIFA 20 soccer, going to be getting some of that on. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. BW says captive ravens have been known to pick up words. Okay, but not so much out in the wild. Interesting. Okay. FIFA 20. Yeah, it'll be good. But that's it. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for spending the morning with us. Like I said, book club will be back Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. The rest of the week, we're going to be on Twitch. Going to be on Twitch the rest of the week, but in the evenings. Have a great night. Happy birthday once again to William. I feel sorry for Melissa because she's going to have to suffer through a week of birthday milking. I'll get through it. Just have a great day, everyone. We had Baghdad Money was with us. BW still with us. Anya had to take off, go to a meeting. Always good seeing that. Did I mention Chris Alberti? I think Chris Alberti was here. Dahlia's here, of course. And I guess there's some people who, I don't know, just randos popped on in. Fair enough. I'm okay with that. If you are new to the stream, by the way, and please give this YouTube channel a follow. That would be jolly nice. Art by Galen's rando. It is absolutely rando. Very much rando. Good seeing you again. William's off to order his birthday dinner. Nice. Good seeing you, Mr. Galen. Yeah. Are you still streaming regularly on Twitch there? Because I'm not really seeing it unless you're doing it like super early. Yeah, new people always welcome. Absolutely. You are, but you're taking more days. All right. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So yeah, because I mean, I've been trying to. Oh, I can talk about it later. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's yeah. You're gonna be on here on YouTube on Friday. Oh, what are you doing on YouTube now then? Yeah, there's a lot of people trying out different platforms right now. Very good. You have another channel for doing game dev. Oh, another. Okay. All right. So you don't do that on Twitch then. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay, I'll have to make sure that I follow it there, because I don't think I do on YouTube. On YouTube, I'll find the link. Well, yeah, yeah. You can do that. That'd be cool. But in the meantime, the Carrington needs to go. Got some things I need to do. It's 12:30. Okay, and yeah, going to be gaming in the evenings on Twitch, 6 p.m. Pacific, all the way through the end of the week, and then book club picking up again on Monday. Have a great day, everyone. Have an awesome weekend. Maybe see you over on Twitch. I hope we do.